please jump in and introduce yourself and the team.
Sure. Hi. Maddie, thanks for the opportunity here. I'm Lloyd Cass, Vice President of Strategy and Market Development at Franklin. I guess I'm looking at the names here. I think I've met many of you, if not briefly, even spoken to you a couple times. I'm here specifically today to really just to introduce a couple of members of my team who will be taking me through this presentation. I think on screen now you can see Alyssa Latucci, who is our Director of Market Development for Federal and State programs, and she'll introduce Justin, who will take you through the example of a measured program. So with that, Alyssa, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the introduction, Lloyd. Like you mentioned, my name is Alyssa Latucci, and I am the Director of Market Development for Federal and State programs at Franklin Energy. And we're going to be talking about this PG&E program that we implement out in California. So first off, I'll give you a quick overview of who Franklin Energy is, and then I'll really be turning it over to Justin to talk more about the specifics of the program, what the program has achieved, and the lessons we've learned along the way. So Franklin Energy has 36 offices across the country. We have worked with over 150 utility clients and have implemented over 500 utility programs. And we implement a whole different variety of programs, including commercial and industrial projects, small business projects, multifamily projects, and single-family residential projects. And to get an idea of our residential programs, you can see we have a varied portfolio across the country and work with a lot of different utilities across the country. And I know that this is a call about measured programs, but I do just want to mention that Franklin Energy doesn't just specialize in measured programs. We do implement measured, deemed, and modeled programs as well. And so when I was thinking about this presentation, I kind of wanted to start off with a 30,000-foot overview to kind of frame how we can think about modeled versus measured. And so in the current mainstream, utility energy efficiency programs tend to use the deemed basis to calculate their savings. And when you think of deemed or modeled basis, really you're using predictions to calculate those savings. And so with predictions, when you have actual values, they might differ from those predictions. And so with measured programs, there would be some programmatic changes that need to be implemented. But with those programmatic changes, you can really access and realize additional benefits. And for instance, the state would pay out rebates to implementers or aggregators that are equal to the savings achieved across the portfolio. So those incentives are really based on performance at the meter, and that's different than what you would see with a modeled or a deemed program. And then companies like Franklin who deliver a program, as well as the contractors who are actually implementing those changes in the households, are incentivized to serve the households with technologies that have those reliable savings so that the taxpayer gets more reliable results. And then the last thing I wanted to call attention to was that evaluations can be done in real time so that when you have an independent evaluator looking at your program, you don't have any surprises that come up. And when we think about a measured program, there are a lot of different stakeholders that come into play. And I'm not going to go into the details of what those different stakeholders actually do, but I did want to call out the different companies that were a part of this program that we'll talk more about. So the program administrator, as well as the data provider here, was PG&E. And when we think about an IRA program, the program administrator would be the state energy office. In this case, Franklin Energy was both the program implementer and as well as the aggregator. We took on both the programmatic and financial risk. And that it doesn't have to be the case that it's the same company in both of these roles, but that's just how it was in this example. We used Recurve as the M&V provider, and I believe they're on this call as well, so I'm sure they can help answer questions that come up there. And then with contractors, there was a variety of different types of contractors that we used: HVAC, electrical, mechanical, the whole gamut there. And then the last stakeholder was obviously the consumer. They opt into these programs and reap the benefits of it. So with that, I will turn it over to Justin, and he can give us some more specifics about the program.
Thanks, Alyssa. So we're going to dive into the program specifically right now. Like she said, I want to start with just a summary of the program, give you guys a little orientation to what the program delivered. Then we'll talk about lessons learned, some of the results that we saw, and kind of wrap with some of the broader program design lessons learned and not so much program specific. So we're going to start with specific keys to this program's success, the results, and then dive into broadly do this approach. Some of the key takeaways we think are important to people. So this program was an evolution. It was designed to deliver residential energy improvements to customers. It really evolved from a couple of different programs, a maintenance program and a retrofit program that were integrated into one and transitioned at the request of the utility into this kind of pay for performance meter-based model. And so we did this on the fly as we moved from a kind of old deemed and modeled into this meter-based approach moving forward. While we were doing that, in the beginning, we were with shell improvements, HVAC maintenance, replacement measures, things like that. And through the operation of the program, we were able to see meter-based results come in and make real-time decisions on the program and adapt as we moved along. And so it was really exciting and important to be able to see the results of our work taking place in the field, looking at those meter-based results and make actionable decisions and pivot the portfolio during operation to focus on things that were more effective. So the result was we shut down the maintenance pathway and we really pivoted the program from gas to gas replacements to look at gas to electric HVAC replacements and really drive the program towards electrification. So really impactful and exciting pivots as a result of the program based on the ability to see that meter-based data real time. Another key piece of this program, just so people are aware, is that it is a trade ally driven program. So we're working directly with a large trade ally force. We have 70 or so participating contractors in this program in the PG&E territory. 20 to 30 of those are actually really heavily engaged. But that's a pretty good trade ally workforce for the territory we were covering. The program was designed and set up in a way easy. And so the program requirements we were able to put in place made it simple for the contractor to participate. And we were able to adapt those also within this program design to meet obligations for doing proper work and meeting QA and QC protocols, but still simplifying the participation for the contractors and the workforce. And the participation was really seamless for the customer. That's a key piece, is that the customer, they, when an HVAC breaks or they need some work, they're used to calling those trade allies out in the field. And many of these customers do exactly that. They reach out, they engage with their contractor of choice. The contractors that are in the program, we're able to refer them in, and they may not even know they were really in the program until we kind of talk about the incentive, and at the end kind of highlight the program benefits. But it really is seamless for someone who's looking to receive these services, that the program's even there. And down in the kind of small box in the lower right, you can see this, our satisfaction rate. The 5-star rating from customer survey data just hopefully illustrates the point that it was really a well-received program by the customers. So that was exciting. The goals that we had set for ourselves were a 1-year goal to electrify 1,000 HVAC units and weatherize 400 homes. This was all in 2022. We came really close to the electrification goal. We didn't quite get to 1,000. We'll talk about that in a minute, but we did exceed our weatherization. So we were actually able within 1 year's time to pivot this whole program into electrification and really deliver strongly on those goals. Let's go into the next slide. So these kind of takeaways are specific to our program and our experience, and we'll get into the broader design ideas in a few minutes. But here I just wanted to point out some of the things that we felt were critical in this specific program's success. And one was the flexibility. The regulatory design around meter-based programs and the design that was set up for this program in specific allowed us to do some of that quick, innovative thinking that we were talking about. So when we were able to look at our results and decide that certain project types weren't delivering savings, we could react to that, and the structure of the program allowed us to do that and really pivot towards beneficial projects and away from things that weren't saving as much. So that flexibility is one key piece to success. Another piece was really selecting the right partners. And so, as I said, we had 70 or so trade allies in the program to begin with. As we moved into the pivot and towards electrification, we really worked with the partners to find those that were ready for the journey, the electrification journey specifically. And we had plenty of them. And some that were a little farther behind, but we were able to bring them along as well. Really focusing on folks who were kind of ready to incorporate the direction we were going into their business model was key. We provided some really important resources to them. So the Heat Pump Nation series is something that we leveraged to help contractors that were interested in electrification, but still needed a little bit more training. We leverage that whole series to help educate them and train them into what to expect when delivering heat pump projects. We also have a heat pump awareness video that we produced that was customer focused. So that helped the contractors position with the customers appropriately. We know that people that receive a heat pump retrofit have a different experience than folks who are used to a gas HVAC system. And so really setting that expectation with the customers up front also helped the contractors have confidence and help the customers know what to expect when they moved into the program. So some of those key pieces, both with our partners and the customer education, were important in driving the program to success. We were also able to use stacked funding. So in California, we had other funding sources that were supporting electrification efforts. We were able to pile those onto this program design, and that really helped spur additional interest. It did run out of funding, and we were able to still continue and sustain interest in the program, which was a great thing. But anywhere you can look to leverage additional funds into these kinds of programs is hugely beneficial. And the last key piece is that data analysis. As I said, being able to look at the data and really speak specifically to issues we were seeing, so we could work with, Recurve, as we said, the evaluation provider, PG&E, the client. We could look at the data, say, here's what we're seeing, and talk through it as a group and kind of look for those, and then get the insights so we could pivot the program. So those were some of the key pieces there, and I'm seeing some chat go on. Maybe is it best to pick up the chat, Maddie, at the end and go through those, or do you want me to take those live as we go?
I'll jump in if there's anything that seems particularly urgent. Otherwise, we can sort of do a full Q&A session at the end if that works for you.
Perfect. That'll be just fine. So let's go to the next slide. This just shows a little bit of the results. And so, as I said, we weren't able to get to 1,000 projects, but we were able to get over 850 heat pump projects delivered within a year. And that's really from when we pivoted the program within a 12-month period. We started the pivot just a little bit before in the fall of 2021, but by 2022, we were fully delivering. And so it was really exciting to be able to deliver that many projects in a reasonable time. The 20% peak reduction is a key piece also. With these projects, we were able to drive significant summer peak reductions. And I think it's important to note that that's kind of how the program was set up. PG&E had structured our agreement to really put us in a position to focus on those. And so I think it's a key learning here also for everybody that's thinking about doing something like this. You have the ability to put in regional interests, whatever's important in your specific area, you can put that structure into this kind of program design and then let the implementer solve for that. And so we were able to, PG&E said, hey, the peak is critical for us. We're going to throw extra compensation at peak savings. And that was the design. And so then we were able to look at that and say, okay, what are we delivering in market, and what of our offer really hones in on that peak period that we can deliver strongly there. And the results showed up. We were able to do that, which was great. The other point I'll make here is just, there's a couple of things to take away. Our savings are real and they're materializing, which is great. The blue and the yellow lines are actuals and forecasts, and you can see we're able to pretty closely track to what was actually going on. So our forecasting was lining up really well with our actuals because we were getting regular data in and able to layer those learnings and that new data into our forecasting. So it allowed us to really closely project what we were delivering, which was exciting. And you get the 100% realization rate, which is to say that in this type of project or program, you're getting real-time savings. The evaluation's being done based on meter data, and so unlike a deemed or a modeled approach where you claim the savings, and then EM&V comes in later and puts a haircut on it. In program using real-time meter data, you're able to see what the savings of the program are when you get the results. And so the savings get paid out on that, the implementer gets compensated on it, and you get a really good realization rate out of an approach like this. Let's move on to the next slide. So I want to just show this real quick, and again, kind of charts for looking at, just for informational purposes. This is actual real program data that Recurve had calculated based on interventions we had done in 2022. On top, what you'll see in the green is seasonal shoulder performance, the red is summer, and the blue is winter. And what you see is in the summer, that giant peak in that later part of the day where our savings really are coming through. And that's where, like I said, PG&E had targeted the incentive for us to focus, and that's where we were able to deliver. So we were able to bring significant peak savings in through this program because that's kind of the design that we were incentivized to deliver. On the bottom, you'll see the winter gas savings. Well, it's a year of gas savings, but what you'll see on the is the colder months, January, February, March, and then on the right, November, December, you got really good gas savings through those electrification measures as well. And so, again, maybe not right for everybody, but that's what we were driving for, and we were able to really get some good decarbonization out of these homes by getting that gas usage down in the winter, driving that peak performance. Really is a strong performance from the program. We were really excited to see this result. So from here, let's go into lessons learned, and then maybe I'll take a breath. There's 2 slides here with a whole bunch of stuff. And so overall, as we think about meter-based program design, these are some of the things that we felt were critical to any design, not our program specifically that we were in, but if you're thinking about meter-based program, here are some things that stood out to us as critical to be successful. And number 1 is that data. So as I said a number of times, it's important to have it available to react to quickly. So the data's got to be there. It's got to be regular, and it's got to be timely. It's very difficult to make informed decisions on a program when you're lagging months and months behind. And so just having that data be consistent is a key piece. The evaluation methodology also, how the savings are being calculated, is critical to keep that as stable as possible. I didn't go into a lot of the history, but we did launch this program in 2020, and many of you may remember that started the pandemic. So a very challenging time to be running a meter-based program as you know, global energy usage patterns shifted. But you know, these days it should be much easier to keep an evaluation methodology stable, and I think that's key. So the implementers who are getting compensated on these models kind of know what to expect and how the game's being played. Number 3 is around cash flow, and you know, in this model we were fronting the incentives to the customer, and that's something that didn't really work for us. We had to kind of go back and restructure. So I would encourage anybody who's looking at how these programs run to think about your partners and creating a mechanism that allows them to, you know, survive this kind of implementation. It was, the modification allowed us to operate very cleanly afterwards, but it was a little challenging in the beginning with the uncertainty of the pandemic and the cash flow and how we were being compensated. We were able to weather it and ultimately put in a good solid program design thanks to our partners. But just something to consider, how you're incentivizing and how you're structuring the payments so your implementers and your partners can be successful. Number 4 is just around rules. The California Public Utilities Commission has a great rule book that governed kind of how we were allowed to operate, and it was really good to have that kind of nailed down and that transparency. And I think as you think about delivering a project or is having a firm set of rules so people understand what to expect important. You know, there's also an attribute component there. We've encountered a number of projects that maybe weren't allowable based on the specifics of our program design. So, you know, program offer stacking, for example, if you've got a low income program, does that get priority over another program? We had to deal with those learnings of, okay, if the customer participates in a low income program after ours, then we were getting those disqualified. Just thinking through the attribution of the other offers in your specific area is important. And I'm happy to go into more detail on that if people want to. Item 5 is around assumptions as you go in. We've all been using deemed savings for a long time, or whatever your technical resource manual numbers provide. The key point here is just what we found was that some of our previous assumptions on measures we were delivering weren't that accurate. And so we had to adapt to that. The work papers in California that had, and the values behind some of the specific measures we used to plan and forecast our program, once we ran those and looked at the meter-based results, we realized pretty quickly that those numbers weren't in line with what we were seeing in the real world and seeing from the meter. So we had to adapt our forecasting based on that. So just be mindful as you have assumptions about what a program should deliver based on the measures you're used to seeing in your area, that those old assumptions of savings may change as you see meter-based results come through. Let's go to item 6. I mentioned our workforce, and we had a large stable of trade allies. I think it's important to make sure that you have good oversight over them and a good QA/QC process, and that you're partnering with them very clearly to kind of reset their expectations. The workforce has been doing things in the same way for a long time, most likely. And I think we had to work with our trade allies to help them understand this isn't just a program where, you know, we throw dollars at a measure and you go do it because that's what we paid you to do, and then you leave. We had to work with them to pivot their frame of mind to understand that these now are savings-based projects, and if they're out there doing work and the savings aren't materializing, that's something we need to address. And so we had a robust QA/QC process in place. We worked closely with the workforce to help explain kind of the program design to them up front. And then you kind of have to re-explain it over and over to them again through the QA/QC process. And so really working with your trade allies to make sure that they understand that this is different than how programs have been operated in the past. And that we need savings to actually show up, that they're doing that quality work, and that every project counts, and they need to make sure they've done it right so the savings materialize at the meter. Item 7's around loading order, and this was again specific to our program because we were running both shell and equipment replacement. But just in general, I think that's applied to anything you're doing. Think about what you're offering within your program and how you kind of stack those things. In this specific example, it was important to do the shell and weatherization items and get those homes as tight as possible and reduce the load as much as possible. So then when we went in and did retrofit work, we were putting in right-sized equipment. I think that's a really beneficial approach. And whatever measure bundle you decide to offer, think about how you stack those and those get loaded. And the implementers will be focused on that as well, but it's just something to pay close attention to and consider. We did find a need for additional work within the homes, depending on what we were doing. So again, with electrification, you can expect upgrades. With the reduction of gas measures, you may have to be doing natural gas safety checks. When you go in and do additional things in the home, whether it be roof or HVAC related, there may be other minor remediations. And especially as you get into the low income environment, I'm sure everybody here is aware that, when you're working in some of those maintenance deferred sites, there may be a need to fund some amount of additional work in the home that's outside of the specific EE, energy efficiency realm. So just think about those additional components as well. And then finally, number 9 is just around targeting. I didn't show a slide here around that, but I think it's important to note what our data showed was we got significantly more savings as we targeted customers. And so if you look at the site averages for a home, they're good. But if you look at the top 25% performers or the top 10% of performers, the numbers get even better and better. And so to maximize and make the most impactful use of your dollar, if there's an ability to target upfront by using your customer data and working with your partners to target those interventions to the homes that are going to most benefit from it and deliver the greatest value, you really can move your portfolio towards a high performance and support those equity goals also. So those are some of the key lessons we learned. I've got one more slide, which is just kind of summarizes the key takeaways to everything. And so, first and foremost, I'm beyond excited to be here to be telling you guys that we were able to, deliver a meter-based program that was successful. It was a long road for us through the pandemic, but it's been great to be here and be able to say that we've done it. We've seen it work. We had interventions in thousands of homes and have good results to show for it. And the results continue to come in. So we're very excited about that. The data is critical. Like I said, just making sure it's there for a variety of reasons, both for program design ideas, making sure we can adapt on the fly is important, but that targeting also is critical. So data plays into this in a number of ways, as you would imagine. The methodology, just making sure that the rules are clear and understood, and everybody kind of has transparency within that, especially when the implementers are carrying the financial risk to deliver this. It's important to have the rules of the road kind of outlined very clearly. And the last key takeaway is just that the workforce is ready. In our experience in our market, we found the HVAC contractors were ready to go. We had a bunch of people that were, what needed to happen in electrification, were eager to jump in. Some of them, like I said, needed more hand holding, but we're still ready to go. And so that was great to see that engagement. On the plumbing side, we did see with the water heaters that they need more development. So that's maybe just my own learning, my team's learning from this one, is that the HVAC folks seemed ready. The plumbers seemed like they needed a little bit more support. Maybe that's interesting to you, I don't know, but that was our experience. And so just working with those folks to make sure you bring along the folks who are excited and ready to go first, and then pick up the folks who are kind of that second tranche that still need a little bit more help. And then of course you've got your laggards. But but that was all exciting, and we were pleased to see that the workforce was ready and was willing to do a job that really performed well and met our expectations in the field. I think that's another key, is just the quality of the work was there with our partners, and so that was exciting. So that rounds out the slides that we wanted to present. So with that, I'll pause and take a breath.
Thank you so much, Justin. We did get quite a few questions in the chat for you, so I will just start at the top and read through them in the order that they came in. And folks can continue to add to the chat as you think of more questions, or if you prepare to just share with your voice as opposed to typing, please raise your hand and I will call on you. So the first question that we got was, did you have specific savings goals or program participation goals?
We did have specific goal. Well, the contract as it was set up had a specific savings goal, and the savings were in MMBTU, so it could be source agnostic, and we could work electric and gas together. So we did have a savings target for the program. And that's primarily the structure of this. It was also, like I said, there was an extra additional incentive to target the peak. So our compensation structure around those savings there was an adder for peak savings that were delivered. But that was really the core track.
Okay. The next question is, this is a two-parter. Can you provide examples of who your partners were, and how did you determine who was ready for the electrification journey?
Our partners, like I said, we had a stable of HVAC contractors in the program already, and some who were not HVAC but were weatherization contractors. We've been a long time because of the evolution of the program. So like I said, we started kind of way back in the old days with a different program design. And so they've been with us for a long time. But we had those folks kind of all in the program and all working with us. Really, I may want to come back on that one and provide better detail from the team, but through the operation and having worked with these folks for several years, we kind of knew who was delivering quality work. We knew who our better performers were, who we had less callbacks on. And so based on kind of our existing experience, who was doing some, heat pump projects here and there already, that's how we really honed in on who to work with. And we just reached out and had conversations with them and kind of said, here's where we're going. Is this something that works for you? And we talked about, how they operate and if that works in their business model. The way this program has been structured for a long time, we had a dedicated contractor outreach team that had really good relationships with our contractors. And so they were having regular conversations. They kind of knew who performed really well and did kind of the best jobs from our own QA and QC already. So we had that prior learning, the prior experience with these guys to be able to kind of pick who was going to go first.
And then is there anything you wanted to add about how do you determine who is ready for electrification? I assume this means the homeowners.
Oh, so yeah, was that a homeowner question or a?
Well, no, I think you answered the first part perfectly.
Yeah,
the contractors, and then the homeowner. There's a separate one about homeowners and electrification.
Yeah, I mean, from the homeowners, it really depended. It depended on what the scope of the work was. We let the contractor and the customer kind of dictate that. So depending on what the customer was looking for, determined if they were eligible for it, and depending on the building type. And then, while the contractor was on site, they'd be looking at that. We had eliminated by 2020 the offer to even do gas to gas replacement. So all of our projects in the program were moving to electrification. That we're California, it's an environment than many of you, so it made a lot of sense for us to put that hard line in and say, in our climate, it makes sense to do electrification in this way. And so all of the jobs, all the HVAC jobs that came through, there was no question. It was just a matter of the contractor making sure that the site was eligible and adequate before doing the work. And it was setting up the parameters for the contractors so they knew, here were the eligibility criteria ahead of time. They could go in and assess the home and say, okay, this is an eligible home. They need HVAC replacement. They've got a gas furnace. We're going to go ahead and do this. And then it's up to them to kind of sell the customer that the electrification is the right way to go and a heat pump, and then manage all of the expectations around that as well. But as you can see from the one chart I showed, the satisfaction in the program was very high, and people really were pleased with the result of their projects.
The next question is, are measured savings based on improvement over a baseline in home energy use across all fuel types?
Yes. Let me think about that question for a second. Scroll back up. Where is that one? Let's see.
That one was at 418 from Brendan.
Yeah, I got it right here. Yeah, I mean, the answer is they are based. So it's the baseline. It's a site-specific baseline in our case, and so these savings are looking at this specific home's participation or energy use 12 months prior. So anybody who participated in the program had to have 12 months of history with the site. And then the savings were evaluated against that 12-month baseline, normalized, of course, using Caltrack methodology. And it was the way it's evaluated is it does look at fuel specific, but then it normalizes and aggregates it up to an MMBTU. So it looks at electric and gas meter data, but ultimately the way we're compensated is a normalized and aggregated number up to MMBTU. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, part of that question is a full year of post improvement data required?
So we are paid, so everything can be structured differently. This particular program is paid on a 2-year tail. So we continue to monitor the performance at the site for 2 years, and the compensation structure draws out over that period of time. So it's actually a 2-year performance period to make sure we get persistence in the savings.
The next question is, why was maintenance not working such that you pivoted?
Good question. I would probably call on people smarter than I in the HVAC world to answer that, but I think overall we were doing refrigerant charge, and I think there was a big question around how effective refrigerant charge can be. And so the way the maintenance pathway was set up was just not delivering. It wasn't delivering the results that were in line with what the original work paper showed. And so there was a challenge, like I said, where our expectations were one and what we were getting as a result was not being delivered. There may be space to go back and look at maintenance again down the road. And so if people want to talk specifically around like HVAC maintenance, conversations, I'm happy to dive deeper into that. I don't want people to walk away from this necessarily thinking one intervention was or wasn't the right thing to do. This is kind of meant to be more broadly, but I'm happy to kind of dive into deep detail on what our experiences with these measures. I think there may be ways to make maintenance work, but the way we had been delivered and the measures we were seeing incentivized through our program were not matching up with our forecasted expectations.
I think I can answer the next one, which is if there is a link to more information on Heat Pump Nation, and I'm happy to share the slides with everybody so that you can get the link to that.
Yep, I put links in there. If they don't work because we PDF it or something, we'll make sure that we do put the links out for everybody.
Thank you. The next question is, how is the program marketed to homeowners, utility-led or contractor-led?
Contractor. Yeah, so contractor primarily. We did in this program, we have presence on the utility webpage. We have some co-branded material, but really we weren't doing outreach. We were doing, there was awareness from the utility side, and occasionally they would send out, in a monthly email, announcements to, you know, the program offerings. Lloyd, did you have something to offer? Oh. So but primarily the marketing and outreach all came from contractor driven volume.
The next question is, for the forecasting, were you using energy modeling to estimate the future savings so that you knew what to install, or did you guess to start and correct as you went?
More the latter. We really developed, as I said, we kind of pivoted from existing programs. And so we had a maintenance and a home upgrade program that were in operation. We, in 2020, brought those in and we're running with that. And we were forecasting based on two different pathways. So the maintenance was actually using the deemed, which was kind of a problem that didn't prove out to value. The home improvement projects we were doing, we'd actually done some backcasting with Recurve to see what the value of those projects was. And so we had better data on those project types going in. And what we saw was the forecasting for that particular intervention was much more in line with what we were seeing in the real world. So that was a great learning also, that, you know, going back and looking, backcasting some of these projects to see what they actually delivered was really helpful in forecasting. And so that's maybe another key takeaway that I'm glad you actually asked that, because I hadn't even thought about putting that in here, that really did help us have a better, more accurate forecast on the one pathway. But we did have to adapt as we went. So as the savings would come in, we were continually updating our assumptions to hone in on what we were actually seeing in the field. And that allowed us to really tighten up our forecasting quite a bit.
The next question is, can you say more about how you were incentivized to achieve savings during peak hours? You kind of entered this with the nature of your contract, but is there anything you wanted to add?
I think that's it. I think that's the key piece, is the compensation structure of the contract. You know, PG&E was really focused on peak load reduction. And so they threw more money at it. They said, if you bring in savings during this time of the day and this time of the year, you get an adder on that. And so we knew there was an extra incentive to go after that part of the day. And we looked for interventions that would drive there strongly, like heat pump base, you know, AC. We knew that was going to be a strong performer, and we looked into climate zones and areas where we knew there was going to be a significant benefit. So not the milder climate zones in California.
I'm going to take moderator's prerogative to jump in with a question of my own, which is, we've been talking about all this data that is critical to like understand and refine your programs. Could you get specific for us on like what data exactly you're talking about when you say you need data access?
Yeah, it's primarily, it's primarily, you know, customer meter data. Being able to look at a large portfolio of customers and evaluate their usage profiles and look for sites that were, you know, optimal for, in our case, you know, summer HVAC interventions, allowed us, you know, that targeting is key. And then being able to take that data once we've done an intervention and look at what measures we served that customer with and how did they perform, to determine if, you know, the specific measures we were delivering were actually producing the expectations. So it really is that meter data that was critical. There's other things in there like location, you know, contact information was helpful for purposes as well if that's available. And then, you know, we collected a small amount of building demographics while we were out there, but really that meter data is the key piece.
And that meter data was provided to you as part of your contract?
It was not, it wasn't provided to us as part of the contract. It was provided to Recurve as part of the evaluation, and the results that came out of that evaluation were critical. We did work to get that data through PG&E also. getting data is always a challenge, let's just say. But when you can get it and it comes through and you can use it, it's a good thing. It can be a very powerful tool.
Yes. Great, thank you. Back to the chat. The next question is, what did the customer cash flow look like? Did the customer see much of the incentive payment as like an actual reduction in cost to the individual?
Yeah, so they did. So the program, this program particularly prescribed incentive amounts, and so they saw that as a direct reduction on the contractor incentive. The customers had the option to take the incentive directly. In most of the cases, you see the customer signing the incentive over to the contractor and the contractor taking it off on the invoice, and so you can require that as part of your program design, like we did, to say, if the incentive is going to the contractor, then it's got to be called out on the paid invoice that the customer's received, and so then the customer can clearly see the value of the incentive in their project.
There's also a question if the information on the actual performance and the deem calculations on the project is publicly available.
Is the information?
I'm at 426.
Yeah, sorry. I'm looking. I was looking back up in the prior chat also about the other question. I want to come back to that for a second. But is the variation between the actual performance and the deemed calculation publicly available? No. I think if you're asking like at a site level, would someone be able to go look publicly and see, was the savings there? How did the two vary from the No, it's not. I'll say no, it's not publicly available. We have access to that kind of information. The utility has access to that information, but at a project level, definitely not. At a program level, maybe, but not in this particular case for this program. So could it be? Yeah. Is it? No. And the one I was reading before that I wanted to back up, what level of savings did the customer see? These can be issues. Yeah, I'm hard pressed to give you a percentage number of site level savings, just because that's not how we've kind of framed things. I know kind of the MMBTU value reductions we were seeing in general, but I can look back with the team and see if we've got some sort of savings percentage level that we could identify and talk about, but I don't have that on hand right now.
For now, then let's go to the next question on contractor readiness. Was the readiness also the case in rural areas where there have been workforce issues for weatherization?
I would say it depends on how rural's rural. A lot of our work took place in Central California, and so for anybody who's familiar, there are some very rural communities out there, but a lot of our work and our labor force was focused more around the more populated areas, and so I would say like the Fresno area, for example, is just the best one. Fresno's a big populated area, but they can get rural pretty quick as you go into the outskirts. And so, I think if you were to be out far away from a population center, you might find challenges, but you never know. That's a good one. I'd have to think more nationally and kind of what other markets might look like to really give you my good feedback if I thought that you'd be able to find contractors that were ready to go this route in more remote and rural locations. I could see that still being a challenge. But again, you can always find somebody who's motivated to transition their business, and with the right value proposition, I think you'll find contractors that can get there. And I do think that heat pumps are becoming enough of a commonplace, even in cold environments and rural environments, that people are starting to make the pivot. And I would say, like, if you're not pivoting now, you're going to start, having to play catch up. I'd be happy to dive deeper into that one also if people want to reach out, and we can talk more about what that experience might look like.
And for folks that have follow-up questions, happy to facilitate them. Just shoot me a message and I can get you connected. The next question is, I'm curious on the energy modeling and what was used for that. I assume this was in reference to the calibration that you were doing on the measured and deciding what to install.
Yeah, I think, I'll say that our evaluation was done by Recurve. And so, having an independent third party that was looking at our program results, they were implementing the CalTrack methodology to evaluate the savings performance of each site and aggregate that up into our portfolio. And so that's how it was done. There's a whole lot underneath that hood that we could peel into. But it was done real time as we could get the data. Obviously, like I said, there were some data flow challenges amongst all of us in the beginning where we worked through a lot of that. And so things are moving much smoother now. But ideally you'd get monthly usage data dumps and be able to provide real-time, real monthly evaluation of the program savings. And again, that kind of goes with the cash flow. If you can look at the more regularly you can look at the data, the better you can streamline the cash flow for the participants to make it work well for everybody. And we were paid when the projects were completed.
I see that Carmen from Recurve put in the chat the link to the CalTrack methods for anybody that wants to check that out. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Carmen.
The question that we've got next is, how much should customers have to contribute for the projects? And was there any particular focus on low or moderate income customers?
I'm not sure what amount customers had to contribute. That's a great question. This was not a low income or moderate income. This was a market rate program. So there was they were paying a good chunk for it. The shell projects were obviously lower cost. The HVAC replacement jobs much higher. We were seeing project costs in the $10,000 to $20,000 range for some of these projects, depending on the full scope. And customers were having to pay a large chunk of that because it was a market rate program. So there was a good customer there.
Yeah, there's another question about costs that we can skip for now. And then the next question we have is, how much did you actually adjust your work scope for the contractors as you move forward? Any additional examples to pivoting away from maintenance?
No, I mean, I think that's one of the biggest ones is that we moved away from the maintenance pathway. And I think, the biggest was saying no more incentives for gas measures. We are no longer incentivizing gas water heaters, no more gas HVAC, all of that. So that was a good enough pivot for me for now. Getting contractors to move away from their tried and true gas appliances into electrification was plenty work scope adjustment for 1 year for me. We'll continue to evaluate the results of the program and fold that into operations as we move forward. Just continually evaluating what works. A good example might be that maintenance stuff, going back and looking at some of those measures and saying, well, was it the entire maintenance package that didn't work for us, or were there certain components of it that were working that we could bring back in? With more and more data, I'd like to be able to go look at that level of data and see if there's some beneficial stuff we've maybe overreacted to and taken off the table that should be incorporated back in.
And the last question in the chat, I think, is a great one to wrap up with, if it is even possible to answer this question in 2 minutes, which is, how could you adjust this program if you didn't have metered data?
Without metered data, it would be challenging. I assume you mean, AMI data, specifically kind of real-time data information. If you were using non-smart meter based info and we're just doing like a monthly, I I would probably have to defer towards the recurve folks who do more of the analysis, but I think it would be challenging. But if you can get any billing data from the utility, you can likely do some analysis. You'd lose, if you don't have the hourly information, you lose the ability to do kind of that peak targeting, I think. But there's still probably some level of analysis that could be done that would allow you to be effective.
Okay, perfect timing to wrap it up. So thank you so much, Justin, Alyssa, Lloyd, for taking the time to present with us. Really appreciate it. I'm happy to connect folks on the line if you have any follow-up questions to make introductions. Otherwise, I will send out the slides to everybody so that you can have the information as well. I think that's it for the day. Always feel free to reach out to me with any follow-up questions. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.